especially dear friend who passed away in 2014. A dear friend who did some incredibly important work that the world should know about, and so many people unfortunately don't. And that was the work of Dr. Roger Leir, L-E-I-R. You can go on the web and type in Dr. Roger Leir, L-E-I-R, and you will see the most fantastic stuff that he was able to do, phenomenally interesting, where he was able to, and he became famous worldwide for doing this particular work. He was a podiatrist and was used to cutting on people and operating, and so he got involved many years ago by chance, and maybe Paul can tell you more about that in a moment, but he got involved, Dr. Leir got involved in alien implants. People were finding, if you fall and break your arm or sprain your wrist or something, you need to get an X-ray. And when people would get X-rays, they would find in the X-ray a little small piece of metal in their body, in their foot, leg, toe, arm, hand, whatever. But it wasn't bothering them. Normally, if you get a piece of metal inside the human body anywhere, it's going to show itself very quick. But people find that there were little metal particles in their body, and they wouldn't know about it unless they happened by chance to get an X-ray and it showed up. And so for some reason, Dr. Leir, I got involved with one of those cases and decided it was in the leg, I believe, or in the foot of one person. And so he operated and cut into the foot and found this little metal object. And that began a whole operation. That began a whole career for Dr. Roger Leir that he later became world famous for, because he discovered that this little piece of metal was actually transmitting an electrical signal. And they were able to find out, he sent the little piece of metal to I think it was one of the, Paul might remember the name of the laboratory, I think it's in New Mexico, and they reported back to him that this metal did not have the ingredients from metals have on the earth. So the metal did not come from the earth, and it was some kind of a device that was beeping and that had the ability to send frequencies to someone. And that opened up a whole world of research that became very well known among the UFO people, among people in the truth movement. Dr. Leir had discovered that there were implants of some kind, highly sophisticated implants being put into people's bodies that were electrical, that were beeping signals. And he started doing operations on people. He did quite a few and saved these little metal implants as evidence. And there's been some very famous cases about his finding of these metal implants. Now the implication is horrendous. The idea that you can carry inside your body somewhere, anywhere, a piece of metal which is beeping a signal and you don't know it. Well, we can talk about how that's possible, because obviously if you get a piece of metal by chance in your arm or in your hand, it's going to be infesting very quickly, and you're going to see it, and you're going to know there's something wrong in your leg or your arm. and you need to have it removed quickly because the body will show you that you've got something that's foreign to the body and it wants it out. But these implants, nobody knew were in their body, no matter where they were, until they happened by chance to get an X-ray, and the little beeping implant began to show up on X-rays. That's the only way they knew it was in there. We could talk about how that was possible later. But Dr. Roger Lear has written many books and traveled the world, and I do mean traveled the world. He was all over the earth continually in Asia and Africa and Europe. In Russia, he went all over the world giving lectures to audiences about the medical findings that he was having in taking these little metal implants out of human bodies. And so, and he, as I said, he wrote many books about it, and there are many videos out on the YouTube with Dr. Roger Lear. So you go to the YouTube after the program and go to YouTube and look up Dr. Roger Lear, L-E-I-R. And you will see him doing the operations. He will explain to you what he's doing, how these things operate, how they work. It's just an extraordinary knowledge to know that humans on the earth, all around the world, are being implanted but with some kind of a homing device, which, you know, they don't even know is in their body, and they wouldn't know ever unless they happen by chance to have had an X-ray. There were a few very famous cases where the people found that they had this. Whitley Strieber, I think, was one who had an implant, and Dr. Lear was telling me about him. So, well, as I said, he had many books, and my dear friend Paul Tice down in San Diego with the Book Tree Publishing and the bookstore has published Dr. Lear's books. So you really want to hear about Dr. Lear and get his books. It's a set of books. So with all of that said, I want to bring on my dear friend Paul Tice. Hopefully he's there. Are you with me, Paul?
Yes, with you here again. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, that's wonderful having you on. Paul and I have been very, very close friends for many years. We've had so many opportunities to meet strange and interesting and fascinating people together and to know these people and work with them. And so, like I said in the beginning of the show, we just thought it would be nice to reminisce for an hour each week on important people that we have known and worked with and set the matter straight, because so many articles have been written about famous people that are not true, and so we thought we'd like to tell the people the real truth about some of these very wonderful people and friends that we've met. So Dr. Roger Lear is the subject for tonight, the doctor in Los Angeles who had been taking alien implants, and that's the only word you can use is alien, because it were not, even the metal itself did not have the qualities that metal does on this earth. So he was able to establish that the metal, the superstructure of the metal itself was not of this earth. So somebody was implanting humans like we do, animals and dogs and cats and animals, for whatever reason. And not necessarily were these implants being put there to track people, because obviously whatever technology was able to do this and how it worked was so sophisticated they didn't need to know where you were. With that kind of technology, whoever was doing this would know how to find you. They would know where you were. So what were these implants really doing, and what were they all about, and who was putting them into people, and how was it possible that they were found deeply inside human bodies, in their feet and arms and legs and hands, but deep inside, where you'd have to, like Dr. Lear did so many times, have to go in and cut and go way inside the human tissue to find it, and then to cut it out and bring it out and put it out for people to see, and then send it to laboratories for governmental laboratories to test and see what these things were. I just think the whole subject is just absolutely a mind trip, thinking about how we humans are being tagged by somebody who has the technology to do that, and do it in such a way that your body and you both will never know they did it. I know how Dr. Lear has talked with both of us, but he talked with me often about how these things work, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, and why the body did not recognize the piece of metal as being foreign to the body and cause an infection. So anyway, so what I was saying about the Book Tree Publishing, Paul Tice has got all of Dr. Lear's books. He was a publisher of Dr. Lear's books, and so he has a whole series of very important books from Dr. Lear that you want to know about and you want to get. So with all of that being said, let me bring Paul back on so that I'm not hogging the whole show. But I'm just so very impressed with the work that Dr. Lear was doing. I want everybody to appreciate and understand how important his work was when he began to show the world that we humans are being implanted with some kind of an electrical device which is beeping a signal, and we'll talk about that signal too in a little bit later. So, Paul, you have published books by Dr. Lear. You have them now, I'm assuming?
Yeah, we'll always have them because of his work being of such great importance. Dr. Lear was an extremely intelligent man. He was a highly respected doctor in Los Angeles, podiatrist, as you mentioned. And what happened was he developed an interest in the UFO field. So he started to go to a few of the conferences and things, and as he explains it, somebody approached him after one of these conferences and asked him if he was a doctor, because they suspected that they had some kind of an implant. This was a woman, and so he thought it was the most ridiculous thing that he had ever heard. I mean, to him, he had never heard of such a thing, and he didn't really believe in it. And then he went to another conference and was approached by this same woman afterwards, and she said, "Please, Dr. Lear," she says, "you're a doctor. You're the only one. If you're interested in this subject, please believe me. There's something going on here, and I would like it if you would please be able to take this out and get it out of my body, because I know that it's not supposed to be there." And so, he thought about it and decided, well, okay, I guess I'll do this, and he did it, and he was one of the first people, if not the first person, to ever remove something like that. And from there, he became convinced that definitely there is something going on. He went on to remove a number of implants from various other people, and some of these people would have hypnotic regression and recall the fact that there were beings in their room and they were brought somewhere, and they felt a pain, and all of a sudden, later on they're able to regress and remember this and look and see that there's a scar in this particular area. And other people had no idea that any of this happened. Suddenly they would discover some kind of a bump or a scar that they had no idea where it was or where it came from. And they would their personality would change just a little bit or something strange, just enough so that they'd know that, and with no explanation, with this thing being in their bodies, they would suspect that something like that had happened. And
and all of them, I need to throw this in too, all of these people that he operated on, they had no scar tissue on the outside of the body at all. There was no way to tell, because whoever, whatever it was able to go and cut into your body and connect this little electrical device, but then coming back out of your body did not leave a scar, period. There was no way to tell that anything had been, nothing was in your body that you could see or feel. And Dr. Lear told me one time the reason, a couple of things about these little devices. One, as he said, they were electrical, and they were sending out signals. And the particular signal that all of these little devices was broadcasting on was the same identical frequency that NASA has developed for their space flights. And it was a very, very secret special frequency that only NASA was allowed to use, and that even other governments in the world did not know about this frequency, and Dr. Lear didn't even know about it until one of the laboratories that he sent these things to be tested to see what they were, one of them happened to tell Dr. Lear, and incidentally, the frequency that this little object is beeping on is a particular frequency that the astronauts use to communicate with Earth. And so that was interesting. And then Dr. Lear confided in me also, how did these things work if they were electrical, if they needed to be, have a battery or something. And he said that whoever was putting these little devices in you was able, they had the technology and the brilliance to know how to connect their little devices to your nerve endings in your body. And they would pick a larger nerve ending and connect it to this little object so that your biological electrical body, the electricity your body produces 24/7, that's how you are able to move and to live, is because you're a biological, electrical, or a battery, so to speak. And so these little objects would be connected to a nerve ending which fed electricity to these little beeping instruments. So that's fascinating. And he said in the second part was why the body could not see them, and you would not necessarily feel them, unless, of course, they were very close to your skin where you could actually feel it, but just touching the spot. But most of them were deeply embedded in the arm and leg and whatever, so that you wouldn't know they're there unless you took an X-ray. Well, he said the reason why the body did not, on anyone, the body did not report something foreign in it is because he said they discovered that these little electrical devices, very small, but they were covered with he said a plastic-like, a celluloid or plastic-like film wrapped around these devices, as if they took the device, connected it to the nerve, and then dumped it and then dipped it into some kind of solution which sealed it. And in that plastic sealing of this device, your DNA from your body was in that plastic material so that the body would not see it, because it has your DNA in this material that was wrapped around this little device. So your body did not see it because it's your own DNA. And so whoever was doing this was very clever to know that the body would show quickly unless you seal it with some sort of a solution or some sort of a plastic material. and in that material coat it with your DNA so that the body would not even recognize it. So I just thought that was interesting, and whoever has that kind of technology to cut into your body, and when would they be doing it that you wouldn't know? It had to be when you're sleeping. And so somebody was able to cut into your body, put a little electrical device that has a coating with your DNA on it and connect it to a nerve ending in your body to power it and put it back, and then sew you back up in such a way that you would never even see a scar and you would never even know it's there. So I'm saying that whoever was able to do this and did it many, many times, and has probably done a lot more times that people don't know yet, it implies it was not human. You know, you'd have to, if a doctor's going to do something like that, which you can't, we don't have that kind of technology, and we can't do it while you're sleeping. So whoever was doing this implanting of humans, you can say what you want, you can mock it and laugh at it and think it's nonsensical and silly, but the fact is he had quite a few of these. I think he said there were either 9 or 13 different ones he himself kept, and had them tested at universities and laboratories around the world, one in Germany, one here in America, others around the world. He had these things tested, and every time the test would come back and say, these are not from the earth, we don't know what they are, but they have the capacity to beep out a signal. So what does all of this imply? I don't know what it implies. I just thought it was fascinating, and the one thing I do know about it is it was true. And I've seen some of those articles, and other people, I've heard them and their experience when they were talking about the operation and what Dr. Lear was able to do. So I just think that's very important to keep in mind. This is not fantasy. It's not some UFO silliness. This is legitimate medical discovery of metal implants in humans that are beeping some kind of a signal, and whoever put it into the people are very highly technically sufficient to do such a thing. So I just think the whole subject is a mind trip, and the implications are overwhelming. And so that's why Paul and I wanted to talk about Dr. Lear's work tonight. Again, just go on the web to Dr. Roger Lear, L-E-I-R. And if you want to get his books, which are phenomenal books, strange and interesting stuff he was talking about in relation to these little electrical devices. Paul, at his store called The Book Tree, and he'll tell you, give you more information on where to get these books and where he is in San Diego. Anyway, Paul, I'm sorry to rattle on, but I wanted everyone to understand the significance of this whole story of what Dr. Lear accidentally happened to fall upon.
Yeah, you knew him just a bit better than I did. In fact, I think you knew him quite a bit better than I did, because you were both living in Los Angeles for many years and spent a lot of time together. And so, I was just really impressed with his research because, number one, nobody else was doing it, and number two, he was doing it right. He was sending these samples off to the very best labs. I mean, for instance, like one of the samples that he got back, I mean, they did find inorganic and organic constituents, I'm reading here, with large amounts of magnesium, copper, aluminum, and some rare earth elements, and these rare earth elements did not match any of the 65,000 known substances and compounds in the computer database of this research facility. And so, when you can't identify this, and, there's also a quote here from the documentary that he did. He did a documentary called, based on his work, and it was called Unsealed Alien Files. It was a TV documentary, and the narrator to that said, with multiple labs confirming the objects are extraterrestrial, The only question that remains is, what's the ultimate purpose of these implants? And we still don't even know that today. I mean, unfortunately, he passed away before he could, get these tested to the extent of discovering that. But he did actually prove that these were not of the earth. They were extraterrestrial objects that were found within human bodies. And how the heck do you explain that?
Right.
Another quote from John Greenwald, he was the founder of the blackvault.com. I mean, he has come forward and said, and there's another quote, from a laboratory to say something is extraterrestrial, you have to look at the meaning of that. This is something not of this world, but a scientific lab has confirmed that an object connected to an alien abduction story by somebody who has no rhyme or reason to have a piece of meteorite in their arm has something that a laboratory labels extraterrestrial. To me, that's pretty big. And so this is real scientific findings. And what had happened was when Dr. Lear has, done this and presented this stuff to the world, he was actually under attack by authorities who had come to him and have tried to force him to drop the calling of himself as a doctor. And I don't know if you remember that, but he was telling me that he was under attack and they were trying to get him to stop for him to stop calling himself a doctor. And because
I didn't know that, but he was definitely a doctor. He operated on many people over many, many years and was well known in Los Angeles. So he was a doctor, but I know why, because government people do not want this kind of knowledge getting out into the world of mankind, that there are in actual fact extraterrestrial life forms here that are not indigenous to this earth, but are from somewhere else, and their technology is so far superior to us that they can put things in our body when we're sleeping and track us and do all kinds of things to we humans that we will never even suspect it. That's how far advanced these extraterrestrial, what the government has finally agreed to call them as EBEs, extraterrestrial biological entities, or alien life forms from other places in the universe, who have come here and are implanting metal objects into people to somehow or another, and that's another subject we have to get to, the actual purpose of these electrical beeping objects that Dr. Lear began taking out of people. What was the purpose? And I asked him one time, was it to track you, to know where you're going and to track you, which was, you could do with a car, and you could do with, if you have a little beeper, you can stick it on the car and then you can watch where it's going. And so I asked him, is that what the reason for the implants were, so that somebody from other worlds who are here can track you and know where you are? And he said that was his opinion. He didn't know for sure. And he said, but I don't think so, because of the people he talked with, the other scientists around the world that he was confiding all of this information with. He said the general consensus was no, they're not tracking you as such to know where you are, because they're too smart for that. They know where you are. Anytime they want you, they know where you are. But they was putting something in your body which was able to monitor your evolution. They can monitor your body to see if you were sick, if whatever it is that's going on inside of you and your body, they could tell instantly because of these little implants.
I've heard that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't necessarily, he said, we don't know for absolute sure, but it appears that these little things, these little electrical devices were able to monitor your body and monitor your life and they could tell if if you're sick or if you got a disease or something. And why? Well, it may be because they own, or they created you, or they are using you. Which we do. We do that with pigeons and birds.
Yeah, and
we put little homing devices on them, but they don't know. I mean, they don't know. They just do what they do.
If you're an advanced intelligence and you've gone to another planet and you've found new life forms, you want to understand them. I mean, you just basically, it's possibly a biological monitoring device in order to understand how life unfolds and how it carries on within a different ecosystem or something of that nature.
Right. That's right.
So, but other scientists, this wasn't just something that Dr. Lear, I mean, you mentioned, and the other scientists had stepped forward to support him because they saw the evidence. I mean, for example, there's this Robert W. Kuntz. He's a nuclear physicist. I mean, he came out and in support of Dr. Roger, absolutely brilliant guy, and he said, however, I realize that federal authorities are unlikely to openly address this matter. And my opinion is that mainstream news media will not write even a single unbiased article on the subject. I mean, the media never, and it's true, the media will never openly discuss this. But he said, nevertheless, it is true that extraterrestrial persons are placing implants in the bodies of U.S. citizens and U.S. scientists. And if it is true, he said, if it is true that extraterrestrial persons are placing implants in the bodies of citizens and scientists, then the matter is of a national security nature that could be more serious than the threat from Al-Qaeda and North Korea. Yeah,
you got that right.
So, I mean, you've got these brilliant scientists coming forward and bringing out the facts.
And agreeing on the severity of this situation.
Yeah, because, there have been reports for years that the government had maybe made some kind of a deal with these aliens in order to trade secret technology, and allowed in exchange for allowing them to abduct our citizens. And if that has been occurring, and because it was basically said that none of our citizens would remember any of this, and then our scientists and governments would get this secret technology that they could carry on, and what's really interesting is when you read about that book, The Day After Roswell.
Yes. That's what I was thinking about. The what was his name? Phil Corso.
Yeah, Philip Corso, and he was the top general in the Army at the time that of the Roswell crash, and he wrote a book exposing the whole thing. And basically, after this so-called crash at Roswell, it was only a matter of time thereafter, and he said that he was responsible for taking each of the different pieces of technology that was discovered within this craft and bringing it to different laboratories across the country to back engineer it. And, that opened the can of worms for later on to negotiate with them for more stuff. But after this had happened, it was really interesting where fiber optics, night vision, all kinds of stuff like that came out all at about the same time, because a lot of this stuff had been back engineered through that. And so they say that as a result of this, we wanted more stuff, and after like the Roswell crash, there were other crashes too where alien beings were actually found injured and that sort of thing, whereby dialogue was opened up, and we apparently, I believe it may have been under Eisenhower. I'm not sure completely, but I think that's when the deal was made, according to some of these sources, that they said that we would, allow all these people to be abducted. And my point, getting back to Dr. Lear, is that a lot of people, more than you would ever think, had been abducted, and a lot of these implants could be in people, and they'll never even know it.
That's right, and they will never even know it because those little implants, as I said, were covered after they were connected to your nerve endings, so the whoever was doing this to you when you're sleeping knew exactly where to place that little object, because it was a nerve ending that they could connect to that object some way, somehow, so that your nerve ending was feeding electricity to this little object, and then they would seal the whole apparatus, very small and tiny, but they would seal it with some kind of a solution or a plastic-like material with your DNA embedded in that material, so your body would never see it, and your body is always an electrically charged thing, and so you're continually giving electricity to this little object to beep its signal, and your body will never know it, and you'll never know it. So I just think this whole subject is just phenomenal. And then when you see that it's actually backed up by many different authorities who have checked it out and who have done experiments on these little devices, and all of them are saying basically the same thing. This kind of metal is not found on the earth. We don't know what it is or where it's come from or what it's doing, but we know one thing: it's actually beeping a signal, and so
yeah, and
it really begs the question: what's really going on here?
Yeah, and I know that there are people who have claimed to have had implants and had scars as well, and that may have been early on in the game. But you're absolutely right about the fact that in Dr. Lear's his first book, The Aliens and the Scalpel, he talks about how that was the one thing that really blew his mind, is how many different nerve parts of the different nerve receptors were actually in these implants, so that it just kind of almost attaches into your nervous system, and then that could be what you're saying is monitoring, what they're monitoring. Because when you've got all these nerves,
are they monitoring? Yeah,
when you've got all these nerve receptors in the actual implant that are connected to it, or in either a symbiotic way or directly in some nature, then there definitely would have to be the reason behind it would have to be to monitor that in some way. So it makes sense that on a certain biological level, there's studies being done in that respect.
Yeah, and he said, Dr. Lear told me once that he had talked with officials, and they told him that this particular beeping signal was, as I said before, was a very readily well-known signal to those in the position to know about it, that was used by NASA to communicate with the Earth and with their satellites and with the astronauts. It's a particular signal that nobody is allowed to use, period. It is so highly guarded, frequency, and no one is allowed to use it ever except NASA. And then he said, but these little devices that he was taking out of people's bodies were broadcasting on that particular frequency. So as clever as we are and as smart as we think we are, somebody was able to very simply, like an adult to a child, was very simply able to take what you think is so important and so well hidden and laugh at it and put it into a little metal device and use that as a transmitting signal. So it's not only showing that whoever's doing this is superior to anything we have at NASA, far superior to any kind of minds and brains that we have on the Earth today, is so far superior that it's just mocking us. It'll use our most important frequencies. It will put implants into your body in such a way you'll never know it. They're playing with you. They're playing you for a fool. And it's just amazing, the technology which is all around us and in us, and we don't even know it, because it has nothing to do with football or anything important.
Well, Dr. Lear was also, because he was privy to such incredible evidence, he became really interested in trying to prove that they were here in other ways. So what had happened was, in 1996, there was this UFO crash in Brazil, and in fact, that's the title of his second book, UFO Crash in Brazil, a genuine UFO crash with surviving ETs. And this thing in Varginha, Varginha, in a small town, very small town in Brazil, in broad daylight, there was a crash, and there was these aliens that one of them was, these three girls were getting out of school, and right in the main part of town, one of these was running around, and they had cornered it in like a back alley, and it was crouching against the wall, and they were scared to death of this thing. Another one had broken its leg. The fire department showed up and used nets to actually catch it, and they brought it to a doctor. And he was told, but the military had shown up by then, and they brought this being into this doctor's office, and they put armed guards outside the door, and they would not allow this doctor to leave until he actually mended the broken leg of this being. And Dr. Lear went all the way down to Brazil to interview all these people and find out about this, because when this happened, it was amazing. Actually, when this happened, it was reported in the Wall Street Journal. Now, because it became such big news, and it was something that was very credible. I mean, when you get a report like this that shows up in the Wall Street Journal, I mean, that just doesn't. That's not the National Enquirer by any means.
No, and he went down there. I think he was invited to come down and check out this whole situation. By
A.J. Gavard, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was very interested, as you said. He became very, very interested in researching the whole idea of extraterrestrial alien life on the Earth.
Yeah, and he was a doctor.
He had a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah. So he interviewed the doctor who actually repaired the leg, and the doctor, told him the whole story and everything. And he interviewed other people and eyewitnesses, and he came away with fully convinced that, this is an actual genuine crash. So he came back and reported it all and wrote this book, UFO Crash in Brazil. And we published that one, The Aliens in the Scalpel. And then his third and final book that we did, the foreword was written by astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell. So you've got an astronaut, Edgar Mitchell, coming forward and saying, you need to look at this. This is Dr. Roger Lear's research and his work. You need to look at this. And so his third book is called UFOs Do Not Exist, The Greatest Lie That Enveloped the World. And and part of the
like you said, to get an astronaut like Edward Mitchell to do to comment on the book and tell people that they need to know about it, that's very, very impressive.
Exactly.
Very impressive to me.
And and then he did an update about Varginha in the UFOs Do Not Exist book. He went back down there and got updates, and what had happened was, all of the guys in the fire department that captured this alien, all of them got moved to different fire stations all around Brazil within 6 months after this event happened. And he went back to the doctor, and the doctor he was fidgeting with a pen. He was very nervous, and he suddenly denied everything that had happened, said it didn't exist. It was all based on rumor. And that just floored Dr. Lear, because so much of,
so much had already been given to him by this doctor, and all of the testimony of other people. There was so much there that he came back and wrote a whole book on the subject.
Yeah,
but then to find out that Brazil was acting like America. If you know something you're not supposed to know, you better keep your mouth shut, and your life is in danger.
Yeah. So, but we do have these 3 books by Dr. Lear: The Aliens in the Scalpel, UFO Crash in Brazil, and UFOs Do Not Exist, The Greatest Lie That Enveloped the World. And the interesting thing about Dr. Lear's work is that nobody's doing it anymore. And it's a real shame, because he proved beyond the shadow of a doubt that this was something that was not of this earth. And probably he's the only one who has ever proven that extraterrestrials had to have been here, because you're finding these implants in people, and it's not coming from this planet. So how do you explain that? I mean, he's the only one who's actually proven this. And in these books, in the back of Aliens in the Scalpel and UFOs Do Not Exist, there's such highly technical scientific data and information and results of studies there that a lot of it is beyond me. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but then you've got people, credible scientists, coming forward and saying, yes, this matches up. This is, stuff that is scientific evidence that it's valid.
And so, I've heard scientists say this is about as scientific as you get. All of this information is right on target. We just didn't know about it. But Dr. Lear was telling us, and now we look at this and we're finding out everything checks out, and that this is very legitimate information that's telling us that we are not alone in this universe, and that somebody came here from somewhere else and are very highly technically brilliant intelligences who can operate on humans, and we will never even know it. Our minds, we won't see it. We'll never know it. They wipe it out of our memory and fix it so that we don't see any scar tissues. And we go through all through your life and never realize that you've been somehow or another being tracked by an electrical device.
Well, other doctors who are capable of doing this type of work and are of the mindset that Dr. Lear first had, was that this is crazy and it could never be real, it's just National Enquirer type stuff. I mean, Dr. Roger Lear was there. He was of that same mindset, but he was bold enough and curious enough and even, compassionate enough to want to try to see if there really was something there. And it blew his mind, and it set him on a course that, no one else has been on, except maybe someone in the future who might maybe check out his books or check out the factual scientific evidence and maybe be convinced to take a further look at this and continue on the work in some way.
Well, I met a surgeon, a doctor, a very, very impressive doctor, contacted me, and I met with him. And he was on call 24 hours a day as a surgeon in Los Angeles, and he was telling me about his investigation of Dr. Lear's work, and he was saying, the stuff he was talking about, other surgeons and other doctors would only they would know those terms that Dr. Lear was using. And he said, and that was very impressive to him. There was no doubt in his mind that Dr. Lear knew what he was talking about, because he used all the right language, all the right technical terms, etc., to describe what he was finding. And this doctor said to me, and and that's what he is as a surgeon. He's on call to other hospitals continually, and he said, there's no doubt in my mind that whatever Roger found is exactly what he said it was. And so that's interesting. The other doctors are recognizing that Dr. Lear knew exactly what he was talking about. So,
yeah. And then in this last book that he wrote in 2014, UFOs Do Not Exist, The Greatest Lie That Enveloped the World, I mean, he had just finished it, and we got the proof, and we were sending the proof to him for final approval, and then he passed away. And I mean, he just barely got this book out, and when you look at this book, it is monumental. I mean, his best proof is in there. This is the one where he lays it all out.